Director Peters, you're the director of the Bureau of Prisons, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
You used to run the correction system in Oregon, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Oregon legalized drugs, is that right?
That's correct.
Oregon's about to reverse that, is that correct?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the policy proposed to reverse that.
Oh, you just ignored Oregon?
Oregon still has a very special place in my heart, sir.
Okay. You haven't read any of the articles about the reversal?
I haven't, Senator.
You don't know anything about it?
Correct, sir.
Okay, wow. You're in charge of implementing the First Step Act, Director?
That's correct.
How many criminals have you released under the First Step Act?
So First Step Act for the overall release since the initiation of the First Step Act is, I have that exact number in front of me.
You don't know off the top of your head?
Sorry, Senator. So 70% of those that were released, we have about 30,000 individuals that have been released since the passage of the First Step Act.
All right, so you've released 30,000 criminals under the First Step Act.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel where we stand up for truth, freedom, and the America that we know and love. If you're tired of government incompetence, woke insanity, and the political games that are destroying this country, you're in the right place. Before we dive into today's topic, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss a video. Let's keep fighting for our country together. All right, folks, today we're talking about a must-see moment from Capitol Hill. Senator John Kennedy absolutely eviscerated the woke nonsense and incompetence coming out of the Biden administration in a fiery exchange with Director Peters of the Bureau of Prisons. If this doesn't make your blood boil, I don't know what will. Now, if you haven't seen the video, let me break it down for you. And trust me, it's going to leave you shaking your head at how far our government has fallen. Let's get into it.
Okay. And how many of them, before you released them, did you contact any of their victims to say we're about to let this guy out?
Senator, it's my understanding that that notification happens through the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I will check into that and get back to you.
You don't know?
Senator, I don't.
Have you followed up with the U.S. attorneys to say, do you have a system to say, hey, we're about to let this guy out? Would we want to be sure the victim's contacted?
As a former victim's advocate, I share that value, that victim notification should happen. I'll check on the process.
But you don't know if it's happening?
That's correct, Senator.
Wow. Okay, of the 30,000 criminals you let free, how many of them have come back? Have committed a crime again, hurt somebody else?
So that number is one that we're still looking at as it relates to the recidivism rate for those that were released on the First Step Act.
You don't have any idea?
No, Senator.
You don't have anybody at the Bureau that can count?
I do not have that number in front of me today,
So let me
Senator.
get this straight. The First Step Act was passed in 2018. This is 2024. Am I right so far?
That's correct.
That's 6 years. And in 6 years, you've let 30,000 criminals go, right?
That's correct.
And you don't have the slightest idea how many of them committed another crime and came back.
I don't have that number in front of me today,
And you
sir.
run the Bureau of Prisons.
That's correct.
And how many employees do you have?
About 40,000 employees.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. General, I know you got a lot to do, but could you give us a hand here? And let's find out whether the First Step Act worked. And how many, if we've released 30,000 criminals after 6 years, our director here doesn't know how many have committed another crime and come back? Can you help us?
Senator, I can certainly follow up on that issue. I will just say in terms of work we've done in the past, for example, on compassionate release, and going to the Bureau of Prisons, this is before Director Peters was there, and asking them for data on compassionate release, because that was one of the issues that has come up.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm not talking about compassionate release.
No, I understand.
You know,
I'm
my
just saying-
colleagues said we were told that it would save money and it would be in the interest of public safety to release criminals from prison. I didn't vote for it, but the majority rules. And so Congress did it. And Ms. Peters, Director Peters at the Bureau of Prisons, and her colleagues released 30,000 criminals, all of whom are there for a reason, okay? They didn't just go to prison for a free toaster. They were there for a reason. And so her department let them go, and after 6 years, we don't have the slightest idea, not a single one of the 40,000 of her employees know how many have committed a second crime and come back. So how the hell are we supposed to figure out whether it worked? Your people ought to hide their head in a bag, Director, that you can't come here in front of this Congress and answer that question. I'm sorry, I interrupted you with my speech.
No, that's okay. I was just going to, my bottom line point on it was, I've often looked to those questions on things like compassionate release and other programs. And one of the challenges we found is the department just doesn't have good data on that. Halfway houses. Congress is spending about $500 million a year on halfway houses. There's really not great recidivism data on that either. How well are they working?
Before we do this, we need to find out. Look, I believe in justice. I believe in treating everybody fairly. But there are people out there, I don't know why, if I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. They're not mixed up. They're not confused. They're not sick. It's not that their mama or daddy didn't love them or not enough. They just hurt other people, and they take other people's stuff, and we have to separate them from society. And the director let 30,000 of these folks go and can't tell me today how many have come back. I just find it takes my breath away. With 40,000 people. How many of your 40,000 people are actually coming to work or are still working from home, Director?
The supermajority of our employees come to work every day because we're running 24/7
What percentage are coming to work every day?
The percentage is quite high. I don't have the exact
You
number.
don't know?
But
Well, maybe there's your problem.
the supermajority of our individuals come to work
If they're not coming
at
to
our
work, they
institutions.
can't give us the answer. I've gone over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. This is why people hate government and don't trust government.
So I'd like to respond concerning the Grassley-Durbin First Step Act signed into law by President
I
Donald
thought
Trump.
you might have a response.
By President Donald Trump. I almost want to repeat that because this notion that it's soft on crime, I don't consider Chuck Grassley soft on crime. I don't consider Donald Trump soft on crime. Let me tell you the numbers that we have. Some 30,000 released. The recidivism rate for people released under the First Step Act is 12.4%. 7 out of every 8 individuals released under the law have not been rearrested or charged with a new crime. By comparison, DOJ estimates that in the decade before the First Step Act was passed, 43% of the people formerly incarcerated in BOP were rearrested within 3 years of their release. Is the First Step Act working? I would submit it is.
Would you yield for a question, Mr. Chair?
When I finish.
I'm sorry. Excuse me for interrupting.
The point I'm making is we decided with the Trump administration and Senator Grassley's leadership that we were going to take a different approach to releasing people from prison. We would give them an opportunity to be trained, educated, skilled, in many ways more prepared for release, because 80%, I believe, in the system are going to be released someday. We don't want to commit another crime or create another victim. I would submit this is a success. Don't put your head in a bag, or whatever Senator suggested. Stand up tall and try to make it better, and I'm ready to do that. But the First Step Act was a constructive reform of the penal system, and I think it was a good idea and stand by it. I'll submit to your question.
Thank you. And I appreciate, as usual, Dick, you made good points. Here's my point. I didn't vote for the First Step Act because I was afraid this was going to happen. And what I hear you saying is that of the 30,000 that the director released, over 3,000 committed another crime and are back. Here's my question. How come you know that and she doesn't?
Because she's probably looking
And the
for.
40,000 people at the Bureau of Prisons who are supposed to give us this information don't know.
I'd like to say in all fairness, she's under oath, and I think when you ask for numbers, she wants to make sure she tells you a number she can live with. I have this information. I think it's probably close to being 100% accurate, but I wouldn't say under oath it is. So I think give her a fair opportunity to respond. I mean, it just might not be the type of thing that comes
But
rolling
you're
off
not
the tongue.
it's not your job. And I appreciate the information, and I'd like to see the study that shows that. I just don't understand why the director has no idea.
Well,
She didn't say she was uncertain and she wanted to go back and check. She said, I don't know. And I just find that extraordinary.
I'm assuming since she's under oath that it's an honest answer.
So here we have Senator Kennedy starting off by asking Director Peters about her time running Oregon's correctional system. Oregon, as you know, went full-blown woke with drug legalization, turning the state into a crime-infested disaster zone. And guess what? They're now trying to walk it back. But when Kennedy asked Peters about it, what does she say? I don't know. She doesn't even have a clue about what's happening in the state she used to run. Are you kidding me? This is why people don't trust the government. These bureaucrats have zero accountability and don't even bother to stay informed. It's pathetic. Now, here's where it gets even worse. Kennedy drills her on the First Step Act, a law passed in 2018 that was supposed to help rehabilitate prisoners and reduce crime. Under this program, 30,000 criminals have been released from prison. 30,000. And when Kennedy asks Peters how many of those 30,000 have committed another crime or hurt someone else, what does she say? I don't know. Folks, this woman has been in charge for years, and she has no idea if this program is working or if it's putting more Americans in danger. 6 years later, and she can't even give us basic stats. Let me tell you something, America. This is not just incompetence. This is criminal negligence. These are 30,000 convicted criminals we're talking about. These aren't people who accidentally jaywalked or got a parking ticket. These are people who have hurt others, stolen from others, and broken the law. And yet the Bureau of Prisons, with its 40,000 employees and billions of dollars in funding, can't even tell us if these people are reoffending. It's absolutely outrageous. You and I both know that if this were a private company, everyone involved would be fired on the spot. But because it's the government, they get away with it. Now, let's talk about Senator Durbin jumping in to defend this disaster. He claims that the recidivism rate for those released under the First Step Act is only 12.4% compared to the 43% rate before the law was passed. Okay, sure, that sounds great on paper. But here's the problem. Why does Durbin have this data, but the director in charge of the program doesn't? How can we trust these numbers when the very people implementing the program have no clue what's going on? This is classic political spin, folks. They cherry-pick numbers to make it sound like everything's working perfectly, while ignoring the glaring incompetence right in front of our faces. Durbin even tries to blame President Trump for the First Step Act, but let's be real here. Trump signed this law with the promise that it would be implemented responsibly. Instead, the Biden administration has turned it into a complete joke. And let's not forget what Senator Kennedy said about the victims. Think about this. Before these criminals were released, did anyone bother to contact their victims? Did anyone pick up the phone and say, hey, just so you know, the person who hurt you or your family is about to be let out of prison? Nope. Peters didn't even know if that was happening. The lack of empathy and basic decency here is just sickening. Folks, this is why people are fed up with the government. This is why we don't trust them anymore. They let criminals out of prison without tracking them, without notifying victims, and without caring about the consequences. And then they wonder why crime is skyrocketing in this country. This isn't just about the First Step Act. This is about a culture of incompetence and irresponsibility that's infecting every level of our government. From the open borders to the soft-on-crime policies, it's clear that the people in charge care more about looking compassionate than actually keeping Americans safe. And it's you and I who pay the price. Listen, I believe in second chances. I believe that people can change. But there are some people out there who are just dangerous. They don't care about right or wrong. They don't care about hurting others. And it's the government's job to protect us from those people. But instead, they're letting them out in droves with no accountability and no plan to keep us safe. And when we call them out on it, they hide behind excuses and blame everyone else. Well, enough is enough. America, it's time to wake up. We can't let these bureaucrats and politicians keep putting our safety at risk. We need leaders like Senator Kennedy who aren't afraid to ask the tough questions and hold people accountable. If you're as fired up about this as I am, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family. Let's get the word out and keep fighting for the America we love. Thanks for watching, and remember, America first always.